They launched 11 missiles at a U.S. destroyer. Within minutes, their flagship was breaking in half. This is the story of how a billion-dollar submarine delivered a precise 11 Harpoon reply that sent ARV Libertad 29 to the bottom and sent oil futures soaring. We'll unpack the battlefield math. 17 SM-6s to kill 9 threats in 40 seconds, 1 missile getting through to damage Gridley, and the counterstrike that followed. Then we'll track the geopolitics, satellite-proof, encrypted data, and a UN Security Council stuck in neutral, as Washington framed the narrative. Unprovoked attack met with controlled legal force. Before we move on, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Why did a warship built for stealth decide the fight without ever being seen? Because the battle's outcome hinged on what the enemy couldn't force. Time before a single missile left its tube, the defense stack around the USS Gerald R. Ford had already defined the rhythm. High cover from F-35Cs and FA-18Es pushed radar horizons outward. 2 Aegis destroyers, John Finn closer in, Gridley offset to guard a threatened sector, carried the knife's edge. And down in blackout, a billion-dollar attack submarine tracked, listened, and calculated, insulated from the noise that would soon flood the surface. When 11 hostile anti-ship missiles rose from Libertad 29, the network snapped tight. Aegis spun up and the firing doctrine took over. 17 SM-6 Block 1As left the rails, each a $4 million bet on seconds and geometry. 9 kills registered in roughly 40 seconds. Intercepts queued by sensor data flowing faster than voices could. 1 leaker twisted toward Gridley, low and smart, living in the seams between jamming strobes and radar side lobes. Inside John Finn's Combat Information Center, the work was arithmetic at combat speed. Threat sorting assigned shooters to tracks by probability, and angle track deconfliction prevented 2 interceptors from chasing the same solution when time was tight. Doctrine allowed a controlled leaker rather than recycling a battery on a low-confidence shot that could open a gap elsewhere. It sounds cold. It's how you keep a formation alive when the engagement window is measured in breaths, not minutes. AI-assisted radar networks carried most of the load. Cooperative engagement stitched airborne and shipboard sensors into a single living track file updates, hit sub-second intervals, feeding interceptors mid-flight with revised vectors as decoys bloomed and jammers pulsed. Human hands set parameters and approved salvos. The machines handled timing and math. The result was a corridor of guidance that bent missiles onto exact intercept points, even as the battle space filled with false echoes and burn-through attempts. The leaker got its say. A single warhead broke through and hit Gridley along the starboard side, tearing compartments and throwing men and women from their feet. Damage control moved fast. Shoring, fire main reroutes, and foam lines went down. Medical teams stabilized a handful of injured sailors. The ship kept power, sensors stayed online, and the carrier's flight deck never slowed. The group remained combat capable. While the surface force spent interceptors, the submarine kept score. Acoustic fingerprints, launch azimuths, and telemetry spill built a geometry of origin. The boat mapped firing solutions and chose terrain masks, using bathymetry and sound channels to keep its own signature under the threshold. Every SM-6 expended bought more clock cycles for the boat to refine aim points and escape routes. That ledger, quiet, patient, unemotional, would settle the account. Here's the cost curve that matters. Defensive shots are expensive and visible, but they buy certainty. Keep steel and jets in the fight long enough for a lower visibility offensive to matter. Offensive outcomes, when timed against a spent and distracted opponent, can be decisive with fewer rounds. The Ford Group accepted the bill because it paid for the only currency you can't replace in combat: time to aim a finishing strike. So why did 9 of 11 die so fast? Sensor fusion cut the lag, SM-6 kinematics reached where older missiles couldn't, and disciplined doctrine refused to chase ghosts. That combination opened a tight window the undersea hunter turned into leverage. The surface fight ended as quickly as it began. Radios cooled, wakes flattened. And in the quiet that followed, The ocean held its breath while the submarine prepared the reply that would redraw the map without showing its face. How does a volley that nobody saw become a message the whole world reads by sunrise? It starts in the quiet. The submarine cold launches its answer. 11 Harpoon Block 2+ missiles slide out, light, and climb into a low, hard arc. They flatten to sea skim, trading altitude for stealth, then rise again in short pops to refresh radar pictures before dipping back under the radar horizon. Each missile carries a different job. 3 are assigned to midship frames where structural load is highest. 4 track the fuel corridor, noses trimmed to strike along pipe runs and manifold spaces. The remaining rounds are tasked to shear points, hinge zones near machinery rooms and across deck supports, to turn buoyancy into dead weight. The first hits land within seconds of each other. Impact fuses set off 221-kilogram fragmentation warheads that split compartments and peel back deck plates. Bulkheads rated for a different era of shock face multiple near-simultaneous blasts. The ship takes on water even as fires leap across passageways. Pumps spool up, then stutter as power flickers. Replacement leads hum, then fail as heat soaks through cable trunks. The bow starts to bite into the sea while the stern lifts, and the list grows degree by degree. Crew members do what trained sailors do. Fire parties move with hoses and foam carts. Damage control teams bang shoring into place, and bridge crews counter-flood to fight the heel. But the tempo favors the attackers. A third missile rips along the midsection and fragments punch through fuel lines. Atomized fuel finds heat and turns flash fires into racing sheets of flame. A fourth strike detonates near a switchboard room, knocking out comms and emergency lighting. With compartments open for firefighting, stability worsens. The ship's spine groans as stress loads jump across the torn midsection. This is where the weapon logic shows itself. The Harpoon's guidance has preloaded waypoints to thread around coastal radar. Then a terminal seeker hunts low-contrast targets through sea clutter. Each missile checks in with its own radar late, shortening warning and forcing defenses to split attention. The salvo timing staggers arrivals by seconds, so close-in weapons engage one threat, while another cuts in from a different bearing. Fragmentation effects spray hot shards through cables, pipes, and thin bulkheads, multiplying the damage beyond the blast circle. When a defender needs a clean track and a steady power bus, chaos becomes its enemy. Midsection damage becomes catastrophic. Fuel lines severed, generator rooms flash and sprays ignite. Secondary blasts pop through ventilation runs and shut down chilled water that cools electronics. Power drops to emergency levels, then dies in sections. Voices yell in the dark as handheld lanterns bounce down smoke-filled ladders. The hull bends until steel remembers it has a limit. It breaks. More than 120 sailors are lost in minutes. Dozens never make muster. The world reacts fast. Oil futures jump on the first alerts. Maritime insurers pause new binds for routes near the Caribbean choke points. Shipping desks send emails through the night, rerouting tankers toward longer, safer tracks. By morning, an emergency session in New York stalls on wording. Meanwhile, new satellite passes show the slick in the debris shadow. Washington pushes encrypted telemetry to Allied capitals, tying the timeline to radar tracks and launch points, and calling it a limited response to an unprovoked strike. Caracas calls it self-defense. The counter comes in data. Partners circulate synchronized timestamps and track files. Open-source analysts scrape ship tracking pings, wave models, and coastline reflections to geolocate debris within hours, narrowing the gap between claim and event. The surgical undersea strike buys something bigger than damage: deterrence in plain view and control of the story. Markets begin to settle, fleets shift to covering positions, and a single lesson runs through operations rooms and cabinet tables alike. One mistake can send a warship under and tilt a region before dawn. Deterrence worked because the reply stayed narrow, provable, and lethal enough to stop the next shot. The quiet strike, checked against hard data and tight rules, carried more weight than a week of podiums and statements. Precision closed the loop, Verification kept partners on side while tempers cooled. Now it's your turn. In crowded sea lanes, what's the smarter tool? Interception that buys minutes, restraint that buys options, or the unseen blade that ends the problem quickly? Tell us why. Next time, we stress this playbook against a swarm where the timeline collapses, sensors saturate, and one mistake means metal in the water before anyone can breathe.